If you've followed me to this point, thank you. You've seen a lot of data. I will summarize by looking at the 12 leading indicators of climate change published by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in their most recent report of 2018. Let's look at each one. Heating and cooling degree days count how many days we need to add more heat or run our air conditioners more than we did before to make our indoor places comfortable. The UN chart shows we are experiencing more extreme temperatures since the 1970s. But here are the summer maximum temperatures for the US. And here's the number of hot days. They've declined dramatically. We're using more air conditioners because we're building a more comfortable environment and lifestyle, not because there are more hot days. There aren't. Wildfire acres burned are only up if you start counting them in 1983. Remember, that's the perfect year to start counting if you want to mislead people. This one, about growing seasons getting longer, is actually true. First, through satellite measurements called leaf indexes, we've seen a tremendous increase in green coverage of the Earth over the past 50 years, and 70% of that is due to more carbon dioxide available to fertilize trees. Both crops and forests have benefited. Second, the growing season has increased more in the West than in the East, probably due to innovations in irrigation in places like California and Arizona, where it's very dry. Look at the UN map. Does it make sense to you that CO2 in the troposphere is causing local effects that respect state boundaries? Is this really an indicator of climate change? There's no such thing as ocean acidification by adding CO2 to the air. All CO2 absorbed by the oceans is available to help zooplankton make their shells. CO2 is fertilizer for them. More fertilizer creates more shells, which then in turn creates other shells and bone and eventually sinks to the bottom, where they get compressed into limestone and chalk. CO2 does not make oceans more acidic. Marine species distribution dropping. Is that being caused by carbon dioxide? Could there be another explanation? If the UN cared about the health of oceans, they would focus on the fact that humans harvest 100 million sharks each year, and we now consume 20 kilos of fish per person worldwide, almost double the amount per capita from 40 years ago. Is CO2 causing humans to eat more fish? We've seen a linear rise in sea level for the past 200 years. Even the UN's chart right there in blue shows a linear 8 inches of sea level rise in the last century with no acceleration at all. It's right there for everyone to see. Projections of sea level rise have failed to come true, so they keep repeating it, staying on message, claiming it just hasn't started yet. It's 10 years from now. How wrong do the models have to be before we give up on them? Arctic sea ice is down. It's clear that sea ice has declined in recent decades, but it isn't clear that means much. Look at the UN graph here in brown. What's the trend? The UN cites the Palmer Drought Index from 1900. Now here's the exact same data without the weighted average on top. How is a lack of increase in droughts a leading climate change indicator? I'm sure the editors at National Geographic will find some way. As we've seen, snowpack is quite variable. No overall trend in 140 years. It probably depends on ocean currents, not on carbon dioxide. Now with this one, they have to be careful not to talk about hurricanes or storms because they know those aren't increasing. So they go with heavy precipitation. Both this chart and the drought chart show that the US is getting wetter, and this is caused by too much CO2 in the upper troposphere? Really? Does this look like a trend or like variance to you? If you start looking at heat waves in 1960, if you aggregate the data by decade, and if you squint hard enough, you may see an increasing trend. But heat waves are not the same thing as percent of hot days, and in any case, Most of the major heat waves occurred in the late 1800s and the 1930s. Do you think those professional researchers couldn't find any heat wave data before 1960? Really? I guess you could use a single snapshot of one country to show the annual average change in temperature over time, but I'd rather look at the big picture. The Earth has been warming for more than 200 years now at a rate of about 1 degree Celsius per century. I'm looking for hockey stick shapes here, and I haven't seen one yet. Have you? Worldwide, we are using more fossil fuels, and quality of life has gone up tremendously. We've lifted 1 billion people out of poverty in the last 30 years. Is that worth some price? We are now bombarded with climate messages daily, and the decarbonization budget is now in the trillions of dollars per year. Do the data support this? Will reducing carbon emissions have any impact? What do you think? All my work on climate is now in one place. Please use this URL when linking to it. Be sure to watch Tony Hiller's videos and the other videos on my playlists. Read essays by serious scientists who can't get their work published. Look hard at the data and try to put the information in context. If you want to learn my plan for saving the world, I invite you to read about the institute I would like to start. Perhaps you can help me start it. Follow the link in the description. I want more people to develop critical thinking skills and learn to do cost-benefit analysis. You're welcome to join me. And thank you for watching.